on top of the pyramids. And this is Mercury, Venus, and Saturn, right? So it has not happened. It only happens every 2,737 years. Not period, that's a comma, sorry. It's a comma. 2,737 years it happens. So the reason why I bring that is because we're in a unique moment in time, because we're in a big transition. And we cannot be understated enough. And you heard from Rogelio, you heard from the other gentleman that spoke from the government, that they are taking huge steps, innovative steps, unprecedented steps to take advantage of these in this time. And you can see from the boards that are along this room that change is not new, right? I think the world always changes. New technologies come, new business models come, so change is not new. But what's new is that there's actually a significant shift, and that's what I'm going to try to explain on what is a major significant shift that is happening now that we all could take advantage of and also benefit from to improve the quality of life, like Mr. Rogelio said as well. So what I'm going to talk about is why digital business specifically. I'm going to talk about the role of the IoT in digital business. I like saying the Internet de las cosas better, but we'll go with IoT. And then we'll see some examples real quick. You heard some already this morning, but we'll go to some. And then what Cisco's doing in this space as well. Okay? Let me go to the next slide. Let's see. Okay, so digital business, there's a lot of definition. What is this digital business? Why we call it digital, first of all, right? Because it's a creation, the definition that we like with Gartner is the creation of new business designs that connects people, business, and things to drive new revenue or efficiencies. And that's to improve the quality of life, to make everything better. So, but it connects those things together. It's not just the things that we're talking about, but like you saw the videos earlier, it's about the people and how business is shifted based on that. I mean, I think, so if you look at, it happens in 3 different pillars. So let me give you an example of a manufacturer, of a robot manufacturer. And if you go to factories, you see all these robots working and on the assembly lines. This robot manufacturer, the name is Fanuc. Fanuc is the Japanese company that makes these yellow-colored robots. They're huge, multi-million-dollar type robots. They have had the same business model for the last 35 years in creating robots and making these robots available for manufacturers in their factories. But what we're working with them is that they don't know what happens to a robot until something goes wrong. So they want to make sure that they had more awareness of what's happening with the robots, and they wanted to improve the services that they had for their customers. So they're looking at the connected machines, connecting these robots into a centralized place, and making them potentially, so they can proactively do proactive maintenance, predictive maintenance, but even maybe do a machine as robot as a service. So the companies who are spending millions of dollars on robots, they don't have to spend the $1 million capital up front. They use it, they pay as they use the robot. So I think that's a big shift in business models. That's what we're talking about. Because once you connect things, you can do new things with them. And the question is, what do you want to do with them that differentiates you from everybody else? And that's what they chose to do, right? So we're working with them on that. The other thing that we talk about is efficiency and innovation, but also it's about when you connect those things, it brings the capability of you to give the people the information they need at the right time, at the right place, at the right moment, so they can make the most intelligent decision possible based on the data that they receive. So that's where you need to have real-time awareness of what's happening in your businesses, whether it's manufacturing, energy, public sector, any vertical that you talk about. That empowers the workforce to make decisions. That's why you hire your employees, is because you hire for their intelligence and how they can make decisions to improve your business. So that's what it does. And the other part is personalizes the business and the citizen experience. Why do you live in Mexico? Why do I live in Los Angeles? Because we live here versus somewhere in India, or that's where my family's from, or somewhere in Europe or in Africa. We live here because, maybe because we were born here, so we live here, but also because what does the services that are provided by the city that other cities don't have? You heard where the city is going, which is phenomenal to provide access and education, but that's one of the reasons why people migrate to different cities and countries, to get more opportunity, to have better access to schools, better quality of life. So now, if you can work anywhere, the future of work is going to be very digital as well, right? So I live in Los Angeles, but I cover globally. So I could live actually globally and do the same job. Same thing's happening with a lot of jobs. So if you can live anywhere, where do you choose to live is going to be dependent on what services and capabilities are available in that location, where you choose to work, for example, as well, and which customers and businesses you give services to, which service provider do you use, because you get better experience, which restaurant or think of any service is all about the service experience. And that's why if you think about all the internet companies, they're really personalizing all of their algorithms and things to make it very personal to you, because they want to retain you longer as a customer. And that's also what's happening, right? So that's actually translating not only from internet companies, but to all businesses. And that's what digital allows you to do, because internet companies had one key differentiator amongst all other businesses, that they were connected to you through some technology medium. But now if you can connect other things through the technology medium, now you can expand that type of service across many other areas. So this digital business discussion is not just about technology. It's actually a board level discussion for companies at the highest level to make a decision on how they want to take advantage of this. At a city level, for example, or a country level. So whether you thrive, survive, or become extinct is going to depend on how you innovate. Not only your technology, but your business model and how you go to the next level. I mean, there's examples that you've heard from, what Uber is doing to taxis or Airbnb. I mean, there's many examples like that. And that's because, either the companies didn't evolve fast enough, or there was another company who thought completely differently and entered your market that you had no idea that there was even a competitor. And that's what's happening as you connect different things. So the digital disruption will displace 4 out of the top 10 incumbents in any vertical, in any industry. And we're seeing that play out as a reality. Because historically, a company was successful when it went from a small company to a big company, or to a bigger company, and then you felt, okay, this company now is too big, it cannot fail. And then the way the company became better was to become more optimized. And that's what the company strategy typically was. When the internet companies, in the beginning, it was all about cyber real estate. Do I have a presence online? And eyeballs are looking at my site. That was the initial intent of a lot of these companies and strategies. Eventually it became about a user experience. Can I get more personal? Do I know who's coming and what I can do for them? But even those internet companies, how many of those internet companies do you actually use? You don't use, there's thousands and millions of internet companies, but you probably, if I were to guess, you probably use between 5 to 8 companies that you typically go to, because they either are easier to use, your experience with them is better, or they provide a better price or convenience. The higher the digital company achieves, 12% market evaluation than their competitors. So if you are, for example, Tesla is a digital company. If you look at their manufacturing, it's really not done in a traditional way. It's mostly done with robots. If you look at how they sell their cars, it's not done how typically the manufacturers sell their cars. And how they service and operate those cars is completely different. The whole concept is different. Their valuation per car is way higher than 12%. So I think you see, that's just one example, but you can see many other examples coming from that. But this is why there is a big shift. So if you look at IoT and the line of business, you understand when I say line of business versus IT? Okay. So line of business, the business users versus the CIO and everything he takes care of. It's a combination that has to happen on both sides. So usually the business decides the business strategy. But as technology and business strategy come together and they are intertwined, you cannot have one without the other. And there's examples I'll show you on where it hasn't happened, and those companies have got into either a lot of trouble or hacked or other things, right? So that happens. That has to happen. And the other thing is Chuck Robbins is our new CEO, and what he's saying is 70% of the people that come to our headquarters in San Jose for executive briefings now are not coming from IT. They're not asking for technology updates or how are we doing in wireless data center collaboration. They're asking us, how do they take advantage of digital and IoT? And these are not the CIO folks. They're typically line of business folks, CEOs, his entire board coming to figure out how do they evolve, how do they make technology a key differentiator for them. And that's what, so 70% of the visitors, that's actually a huge shift that we've seen in the last few years. So when you look at a business, it really, you can start a business by saying, hey, I'm going to connect, I'm going to use robots instead of people, and you can get cost efficiencies maybe from that. But really, it starts from changing the way your business process operates. Sometimes your culture holds you back of the company because they don't want to change with the technology. They say, no, this is the way we've done it, we're going to continue doing it this way. So I think you have to overcome process, technology, and even the people that you have. Even we face this at Cisco. The people that we have we have 70, I think 90,000 employees. Are all those people able to translate what Cisco does as a company now to their customers in this line of business discussion, or is it more selling router switches, wireless access points, right? So we are also pivoting the type of people that we hire that are more software-oriented, that are more business-oriented as far as understanding how those shifts happen. And it's not about the technology, it's about the outcome. What can come out of the technology from a business standpoint? So we're looking at that too. The other thing is the reimagined value that comes with the strategy, the value that you bring to your customers. So what we've seen is that value is being eroded. Your intellectual property as a company, or as a city, or as a public sector entity, or as a utility, the value you had was maybe your assets, your people, your access to customers. All of that is up for grabs, if you will, right? It's being eroded. So your IP that you have you have to reimagine how you translate value. And the other big one, and I'm going to talk about a little bit later, is data. The connection is great, but I think that what do you do with the data? Who owns the data? How do you manage data? I'll show you a little bit later. That's going to be the next evolution of where you need to focus. Because, so let me get to that. So we're seeing IoT in this now, shifting to IoT from a digital standpoint. IoT in industrials, because that's the area where we're seeing the most uptake, and they were the furthest behind in technology. So manufacturing, utilities, energy, these companies are now starting to evolve their business processes. In energy, for example, 90% of all new energy created in 2015, according to the Energy International Association, all new energy globally, 90% of new energy created was done with the renewable energy. Was done with wind, with solar, not with the traditional power plants. What's significant about that, when you have a traditional power plant creating energy, energy goes one direction, right? So the grid that's managing your distribution is actually fairly manageable because all the energy is coming from one source, going to other sources. But when you have alternative energy, like solar, that's coming from all different parts of the city, of the nation. Wind is coming from different parts. And when that energy enters the grid, now there's a huge potential for the grid to be unstable. And when it becomes unstable, that's when it creates problems. So if 90% of all your renewable energy, all energy in 2015 is coming from renewables, that is going to be a trend, that is a future trend that we are banking on. In fact, us working with CFE here locally, they're investing a lot of money in substation automation, because now you need real-time access to those substations to be able to control, where the energy is coming from and how do you moderate, keep that balance. So that's very important. The other trend that's happening is a lot of a smart meter. We're working with CFE as well on smart meters connection. That is I didn't know this, I just found out earlier, that you pay your electric bill every 2 months. Is that correct? Every 2 months. And the reason why you do that is because it's not because of what you used, it's based on an algorithm that they use to say this is probably how much you used. Well, now with smart meters that connect to every home, they'll have real-time data on your actual usage. So you'll be able to pay monthly, which may not be good for you, but it's good for CFE because they get cash flow faster. But then you get a more accurate bill on what you're using, which could be good or bad, depending on your usage. So I think that, but you can see what's happening. So it saves them on labor because nobody's going out there checking those meters, but it also improves operations, improves accuracy for them. Smart manufacturing, you know, all these manufacturing plants are getting connected, and I'll have an example of that. But it's not just the connections, but what's happening is a lot of new devices that are coming into the manufacturing environment are coming all wireless. So we've seen, you know what a torque is, those big wrenches that are torque wrenches that measure exactly how much pressure you put on a bolt. Those are wirelessly connected. So they used to be wired connected, but now they're wirelessly connected. There's toolboxes that I've seen when I was in Germany that actually are like robots. The toolbox moves around the factory automatically because it's wirelessly connected, and it knows it's like a drone on wheels. So wherever the machine that needs that particular tool, it gets there, versus the person having to find the tool and bringing it there. So it automatically does that based on understanding where the line flow is and which person's working on which part. So it automatically does it. So that's becoming much more intelligent in how they operate, and it's creating huge efficiencies. Boeing loses millions of dollars because they're actually lose assets, lose components in the factory because they thought they put it there, but somehow it moved and they can't find it. So I think that those are the things that are happening. Smart cities, we covered a little bit. Fleet management, connected buses, connected trains to provide access, and then other examples as well. So where is the value coming from? So we talk about a lot of different things being connected. There's examples of 50 billion things in 2020. 50 billion there's 7,000 billion people in the world. And how many devices do you have? How many people have 5 devices that connect to the network? 3 devices. 5 devices? Wow, okay. 3 devices is the most common. They have 3 devices. And now with the Fitbit and all these other devices, but that's, if you have 7 million people, multiply that times 3, that's only 21 billion, right? 7 billion, 21 billion. But we're expecting 50 billion. There's also examples of even more. So those are not people connecting things, it's things connecting things, right? It's ATM machines, it's buses, it's trains, it's other things. So that's what's happening, and also how do you access to that value? So let me give you one more example. So you know what a cookie is? In the search engine you use, sometimes you get downloaded cookies. So a cookie is a huge innovation in the way when you do web searching. So that allows the search engine or any application to know where you have searched and where you have been, and based on that analytics, they can create a better experience for you, like we talked about before. So companies like Amazon, who based on your preference can put ads everywhere, their business model could not exist without the internet or without these cookie enablement, right? Amazon could not exist without that. So now that if you think about the cookie of the future being a sensor, if the sensor in IoT is like that cookie, think about what new business models, what new companies, what new capabilities will come based on having access. And access is only good if the access is shared, right? The cookie, any of the applications can look at those cookies. So the question is now, we talked about having a common network for a city. A lot of companies are now willing to share information across to be able to give access. But now a lot of new startups are starting, and I'll share what we're doing with startups, built on the Internet of Things in Internet. So John Chambers, our ex-CEO, said at one point that the Internet of Things will have 10 times the impact to the world as the previous version of the Internet. So if you think about how valuable the Internet is today to us, and if you think 10 times greater will be what happens when we connect all the things together, on that would allow. You can walk, your autonomous car drives you to your house in the future, and you walk in the car into your house, and the lights go on, the TV goes on, your bath water starts and whatever you know. So all these things will help. It's all because it's all interconnected. Could change the way you work, the way you live, and also hopefully the idea is to improve your life, right? Make it better for you. So that's kind of where we're headed. So what role will IoT play in your company, in your digital business, right? So will it help you define what you do better, right? Will it help you enable new service, new capabilities, or differentiate, right? So you can see some examples of, you know, does it help you do better analytics of the business that you already have? Or does it enable you to do new services, basically faster times to respond to customer needs based on that? Or does it differentiate what you do by providing you the intelligence and connectivity that you need? So most companies that we work with, regardless of industry, are in this journey. The number one step they do is like, okay, I don't have all my things connected, let me connect them and see what happens, right? So they connect the things together. Now they have maybe operational efficiency, they have those types of things. Eventually, they go to a connected service. So this is a manufacturing example, but I talked about manufacturing. Let me switch to a bus. In a bus, you may have things connected. Like, for example, you have cameras in a bus. You have Wi-Fi access in a bus. That's what we're providing now. Usually, people want, as they use buses more, they want to be on the network. So we provide Wi-Fi access in buses, which then connects to a service provider. So you connect the things together. So you have Wi-Fi access, you have cameras. Eventually, you want to do connected service. Now, connected service means that's good that you connected it and you're providing access to your users, but do I know where the bus is? Is the bus going to a place where there's no people waiting? Should it even go there? Should I route it somewhere else? Right? So now you're getting to more of a fleet management, right, type system where it becomes a little bit more intelligent. We've done these examples in other cities, but you can route the bus, route the waste management, other things on the most optimal way, saves on carbon footprint, saves on, you know, gas utilization, saves on, you know, people waiting also, right? And then you go to a connected ecosystem. Now, the connected ecosystem goes a step further. So if I take the bus example forward, you know where the bus route is and where people are waiting, how many people are on the bus, because now video analytics can tell how many people are getting on the bus and off the bus from which stop. So you have all that in the connected service. In the ecosystem then talks about, well, you know, we know that there's 5 conferences happening in Mexico City. So there's you know, maybe 200,000 more people coming into the city. They will need mass transportation. They will need taxi service. So now maybe you want to, and the events are happening in certain locations. So now if you have all that ecosystem connected, you can route traffic more efficiently with allowing the signaling system, the bus system, maybe even other flow of traffic. So you're connecting more things together. And if it's a hot day or a rainy day, based on temperature sensors around the city, now you can see how you can connect all this data. It becomes more valuable. Because your data is valuable when you use it in your company, but it's more valuable when you combine your data with other people's data. Now your scope of what is possible and how it's interconnected becomes greater. But there's challenges, obviously, right? I mean, as I'm speaking, you can see challenges happening already. One challenge is, you know, is the connectivity stable? Do we trust it? Are we able to connect it? What is it going to be? You know, LTE, 3G? Is it going to be Wi-Fi? Is it going to be, you know, low power, long range? Is it going to be what Zigbee, et cetera, right? So the other part that's huge is security, because obviously, you know, as you connect different things, security becomes paramount. And if you don't want to share information or be connected and you get hacked into that device, or even worse, your company gets hacked through a connection that in your factory floor or your utility facility, right? The other thing is you don't want real-time visibility. So you connect the thing, but you want to be able to use that information coming from that device in real time. Otherwise, is perishable, is useless. It's only valuable if something happens in that moment in time and you can take advantage of it, right? Otherwise, you're just collecting data for collecting data's sake to do long-term analytics. But if you want to do real-time analytics to give the information to your people to take action, you need it in real time. The other one is, how do you monetize? We talked about value. How do all the information, how do you create value from it? How do you, maybe you want to charge people with it, right? A lot of cities are providing Wi-Fi access, but they don't have money to provide to buy the access points. How are they monetizing it? Well, they're going to ad agencies and marketing firms and saying, hey, you can collect the information, anonymous, you don't get people's names, but information of my population in this geography if you provide me the infrastructure to provide access to my citizens. And in turn, you can have all the data, where it's searching, how many times they go to Facebook, how many times they search in Google. You get all the information, you can use it for marketing purposes. It's good for the marketing company because they get more intelligence. It's good for the city because they're able to provide Wi-Fi access to their citizens. That's one model. You can go, your imagination can run wild based on the vertical that you're in, on what's possible, right? Think about healthcare. A lot of in rural areas, they want to be able to open a clinic. There's no doctors available for those clinics, but they want to be able to provide a doctor in the central, from the hospital to available via video, so to the clinic. But the clinic needs to have sensors like blood pressure sensor, other sensors, temperature sensors, so the doctor can get real-time information on what's happening with the patient. So all of those things are funded either by the government or even by drug companies who say, we'll fund the infrastructure for this doctor to build, or for the city to build regional offices, and we'll fund all that, which is great for, again, people to have access to doctors. And in return, then they get some, subsidies or availability through the hospital, right? So there's different business models. The key is how do you use it. The other one is centers of data. So the data, all of the data does not have to go to the cloud. So if you have to send every sensor data, every bus that's connected, and every camera in the bus, in the example I gave, has to send all the information to the cloud, and the cloud makes a determination. Oh, there's too many people on the bus, so that bus needs to get routed somewhere else. You're dependent on the connectivity to the bus, the cellular connection, how fast it can react. You're also dependent on how far that information has to travel, the algorithm, and then coming back. So usually what you want is, you want to move, instead of moving data to compute, you want to move the compute closer to the data if you want to take advantage of real-time information. So we have systems, and other companies have systems that do that too, right? So the bus has a computing, edge computing, a fog node, if you will, that can get video information and can, if there's no updates, if the bus is empty, it doesn't have to tell anybody the bus is empty, because they already, they only have to do a change update, right? But the local intelligence needs to be there for that. If somebody in a bus is lying down on the floor with video analytics, you want to switch to high definition, record video, and then transmit video at the same time. Otherwise, it's going to be picture updates. So that intelligence has to be local, right? So we're seeing that in energy too. All these substations are getting monitored. The higher the frequency of the monitoring, the more you can detect anomalies. But the higher the frequency, that means you're sending more information to the cloud. But if the local intelligence can say, yes, on average, it's all within the average, then don't have to send all that information to the cloud. But if there's an anomaly, send that to the cloud and make a decision locally. Right? So that's what's happening. The other one is data sovereignty. Who owns the data? That's the big million-dollar question. When you collect all this data, who owns the data? So I was in a meeting with, for the IoT World Forum, we were in a meeting with the CTO of GM, the car manufacturer, and one of the executives out of the Fanuc, the robot manufacturer I mentioned. So the discussion was, this is 3 years ago. They solved the problem, so it's not a problem now. But 3 years ago, it was a problem. 3 years ago, they were talking about, okay, so Fanuc wanted to connect all these robots, like I told you. They were evaluating ways to do it, and they were having this open discussion, and the GM CTO stood up and said, well, Fanuc, you guys want to connect all your robots centrally. If you do that, then how many cars in my factory are going through my assembly line, because if you connect all the robots and that's going through your cloud, you know how many cars are being produced. And since you're my global standard, and you are in my every factory around the world, you know what my output of production is globally. And if you know that, then you can predict my stock price because it's based on sales. And there's, Fanuc was saying at the time, I remember, no, that's not why we're going to use the data. He goes, I know that's not how you're saying you're not going to use the data, but that risk is there because the data can be analyzed that way, right? So now they solved the problem, and they did it in their own proprietary way. We helped them with it. But that becomes the key, right? So if you now connect all these devices and you're opening up to this new digital vision, you know, who's going to own the data? So that's, I would say that if anybody here is in a startup, think about how can you create a startup that revolves around ownership of data. That would be my advice, and we can talk offline on some examples of what can be done. So that's key. And also, what's key is policy. Government policy sometimes is behind the times of technology, obviously, right? So technology goes at much faster speed. So how can technology keep track of, you know, what's happening? So and you know, Uber works here, but Uber does not work everywhere because those countries and cities have not realized how they can put a policy around that technology, on that capability. So they're saying, and usually when governments and cities don't have a policy, they say, not allowed, right? So they just cut it all out versus limiting it. So I think that's where another thing is as you innovate. So when you do substation automation, smart metering, you know, manufacturing and understanding your fleet lines and all of that, we have to work with government regulations. That's what a big part of our business unit's role is, to how do we certify our solutions to comply with government policies or even, you know, OSHA requirements because they're sometimes in harsh conditions. So how do you do all of that? That's another thing you should keep in mind as you look at that. And then automation and management. The last key point on this slide is ecosystems, because we have found that we cannot do this by ourselves. We have partners here like Intel, Rockwell, Schneider, and we work with them in different verticals because we don't have that capability sometimes, right? We are part of that solution, not the entire solution. And that will be similar to as you go into this digital world and you want to share data, and you're going to have to work with partners. You're going to have technology partners, business partners that can allow you to take advantage of these opportunities together. And I think so that's going to is very, very key. So let me give you an example of the smart and connected cities. I think it kind of plays into what you heard before. You know, 30% of traffic in a city is because people are looking for parking. In some cities, worse. You know, when I was in Brazil and visiting them, oh, it's worse. India, forget about it, right? So population growth, 70% growth in cities. So I don't know if you're noticing it here, but a lot of cities are getting more inflow from rural countries because they're looking for opportunity. They're looking for, you know, they're looking for a better opportunity because, you know, farming and the rural area, there's not much opportunity for their families. So there's more urbanization happening around the world. And a lot of cities are now trying to figure out how they manage that inflow of more people, how to optimize the city infrastructure. And then there is an $82 billion spend in modernizing cities this is per state, meaning per country also. You hear this in, you know, how do we get what was the term? Ciudad conectado, right? It was the term they use here. But connected city is happening globally. But the way that he presented it, it is unprecedented. No city is saying we're going to put a network together. But a lot of cities are coming up with different innovative ways to help manage this inflow of people. So what we collectively work on from a digital fabric standpoint is number one, you need to collect information, analyze, visualize it. How do you make sense of the data is very key. I can tell you that we have now in analytics to hire business scientists. You need a scientist degree to figure out the data. Well, if there was an easy way to absorb the data and visualize it so you can take action on it, that's the next. A lot of companies, startups, are in that space. And then what do you do with it? What do you do with that information? How do you act? Do you automatically do something with your system, or do you enable somebody else to go do it? those types of things. So in some examples, we talked about Mexico Conectado. In last month alone, from what I heard, last month alone, 9.7 million people got access to the network, which is an amazing number for them. And we've seen, what we've done evaluation around the world. In transportation, sorry, this went too fast. In transportation, there are more cars on the road than there ever has been before, right? There's 28% more vehicles on roads globally. This is a global number. How many of you think that's true? Yes, it's definitely true for Los Angeles too. It's getting more and more congested, and that's because there's more people moving in. And the road infrastructure was not built for the number of people that are coming into the city. How do you maximize that? And there's 49% more ridership, meaning on public transit, on metros. More people are using that because it's just hard to get around if you were to drive it on your own, or accessibility, right? It's cheaper to do it. And then a longer rolling stock upgrades is basically a road terminology for upgrades. So you can see from all the different connectors, same type of actions that need to be taken, fleet management, but connectivity. But bottom line is, how do you improve the experience of the people riding it? How do you improve the route that those transit devices are taking? And how do you, they have to operate longer, so how do you make sure that they're more efficient and you can predictively manage those fleets or those trains, or you don't wait till they break down, you can proactively fix them as they manage. You can do that because you're connecting the sensors in those, or putting sensors in those devices, in those trains. In manufacturing, quickly, 14% of the factories connect to the enterprise. So last week I was in Thailand for a meeting, and in Thailand, only 15% of the manufacturers actually have Wi-Fi in their factories. And Thailand is one of the biggest outsourcers in manufacturing in that region. So they are throwing people at the problem, not technology at the problem. And I think that the other data point in China, for example, there's only if you think of China, they obviously have a lot of people, but their people are 1/3 as efficient as the people in the Americas or even Northern Europe. And that's because the Americas and Northern Europe had invested in technology in manufacturing where they have not. They felt in the past they didn't have to, but now they're realizing that they have to. And the main reason why they're realizing that is because now it's only 25% cheaper to build in China versus the U.S. 25%. That is not that dramatic or compelling anymore, right? I think that's what's causing them to go through more of an automated system. And you can see, we're working with a company like Foxconn. We manufacture through Foxconn. They're Apple's biggest manufacturer. They are revamping all their facilities to go with automated robots and automated systems. It's going to cause a problem with the population because a lot of the urbanization is happening because of manufacturing. So, but they have to compete, and they're going to have to find a different way. But globally, that's happening from a competitive standpoint. There's a story also in Shanghai. They don't have enough noodle cooks. They make noodles by hand. They don't have enough people that know how to do that, and they can't find them anymore. So they actually have a robot in restaurants making noodle. That's how desperate it is. I swear to God, that's a true story. Yeah, these robots make those noodles. Yeah, but because they can't, not only can they find that art anymore, but the people that are willing to do it are not there. So they have to go to the robots. Very interesting, right? Oh, actually, it said it right there. Manufacturers face a shortage in skilled workers in noodle making in China. Yeah. Same model. These are the Fanuc robots. As a picture of them. The yellow. They have a trademark. I mean, not trademark. Their brand is that yellow robot. So you can see what we're doing with GM, and even locally with Nissan, the IoT team has been working on automating their systems here in Mexico. So we obviously IoT can play in a lot of different verticals. These are some of the use cases that us and our partners, like I mentioned, Rockwell, Schneider, and Intel, we all collaborate to do these. We cannot do these by ourselves, but these are use cases. So when we talk to a customer, we talk about connected roadways. I don't know about connected roadways. So, I talked about Tesla. So there's no, you heard about autopilot. Tesla has an autopilot, and a lot of new cars are coming with sensors. They can speed up the car, slow down the car on its own, or even stop the car. Well, that is great if you just want to manage the car flow as the car is operating. The next evolution that they talk about is autonomous cars. The car will take you where you want to go, and you don't have to drive it at all. Well, you cannot do that with the current technology. So even though Google Maps tells you exactly what road you're on, how fast you're going, what the traffic looks like, that is not accurate enough for an autonomous car. You need that car to not rely on a satellite system or a cloud system to tell you, hey, you need to stop or move or turn or exit. Sometimes that even if you're looking at a road, you may be thinking that you're on this road, but the Google tells you, or any map system tells you you're on some other. I don't want to pick on Google, but you're on a different map system, on a different road. So what they're coming up with is they have to have car-to-car communication and car-to-road communication for the autonomous car to be actual reality. So in Netherlands is where the first projects are happening, where they're actually putting sensors across all the roads. All the major highways in Netherlands are getting upgraded. They're putting sensors for phase one is to monitor car traffic. So that's phase one, because the sensors can do that. Phase two, with the same sensors, is going to be to provide dual information to the car and to the road. Now, to fund that, right now most cars are connected, and they have map, traffic information, satellite radio or other systems, right? So to do that, one of the ways that they're trying to fund it, and I know we're going to have a discussion with Jasper, is providing some of those services, radio services on that communication link, potentially, right, to fund it. So that's step one. Step two will be eventually where the road and the car communication is standardized. After this is 5 years phase plan for them, and then the car can they can trust and put policies to say in Netherlands that yes, we accept autonomous cars, because which government would trust an autonomous car? How many of you trust an autonomous car today, right? So the government has to put policies to say yes, that's accepted. They won't do that until they are able to control or at least have visibility on how that's going to operate, right? So I think you see what's happening with technology. And that's just one example. I mean, we could spend hours going through some of these use cases that we work with, but think about it in your own industries that you're in, on what's possible and what are some of the things that potentially could fit into these buckets or other buckets, right? All right. So what is Cisco? Just one slide on what we're doing. We obviously provide IoT architectures. We provide all the way from connectivity to analytic preparation. We don't do true analytics in our offer right now, today. And I don't know about future acquisitions, but today we don't do pure analytics, but we do enabling of analytics, because the key there is, when you have sensors and you have data coming into an application, that application can use the data. But our goal is, how do you network that data to go to this application, that application, and other applications, so the data can be shared? That's what our analytics platforms enable, is the sharing and networking of analytics data. The second thing is we have an investment fund. We are the third largest IoT investor today in the world. And what we do is we don't invest to buy. This is not acquisition strategy. It's investment strategy, where we invest in startups who want to build an IoT. They want to build on top of our IoT platform. So we have, this is just an example of companies, but we have a $250 million so far that we've invested in this market. We have IoT innovation centers. So these centers are not data centers. We have 9 of them. These innovation centers are for incubating and hosting companies who want to build IoT or digital application or test connections. So if you want to test, these, for example, we talked about the roadways, right? Some of those testing is happening in these innovation centers, and it's open to anybody that wants to use these facilities. We provide the technology and the platform, and you can bring your programmers or engineers, and we can work together to solve a problem, your problem. The other thing is we're at the IoT regional event, but we also have global events that are happening. The fourth global event is happening in Berlin. Mark it in your calendars right now, October 18th. Oh, I forgot the zero there. Sorry, 18th to 20th. So in October. And then we talked about the global partnership. We could not, like I said, we cannot do this alone. We have key partnerships. These are just some of the partners that we use. There's many others, especially in the software realm, that we use. And then we either participate or chair some of the standard bodies for IoT. So all the standard bodies that are doing IoT standards. That's key because the quicker we get to a standard, the quicker we can get to that hockey stick on how IoT is adopted around the world, right? Because right now, it's still proprietary. We have put a lot of gateways, protocol translation. Eventually, it'll be seamless. That's the goal. And like I said, you're all invited to Berlin in October. So we can all chat, we can have dinner, we can have a good discussion, we can see all the things that are happening in the IoT environment. And this is not a Cisco event. Cisco sponsors, but it's like this. We invite GE, Rockwell, all the industry leaders to come and tell you what innovations they're doing from an IoT standpoint to help you with your business models. That's it. Any questions? Was this helpful? Informative?